So, Mr. Michael, welcome back.
Mr. Norris.
As some girl shouted out during the Unplugged the other night, welcome back. And I wonder if you consider this, as much as I guess the press treated it, as the comeback for George Michael this year. Is it a comeback, do you think?
Well, I mean, obviously playing the show was like a comeback because it was the first show I'd played in 3 years. But in terms of music, I don't really consider it a comeback in the sense that everywhere in the world, but America, I had some very successful projects in between the last big album and now. And it's only really in America that it's considered a real comeback.
So talking about America, is there a particular problem that you've got in terms of your stance with? Are you less interested in how things are going in the States at this point?
No, I'm not less interested in this in how things are going. I think obviously you want to reach the States because it's such a mass of people. I always thought I wanted to be very successful in America, and then Faith happened. And I had been very successful up until then, but then suddenly I realized what it was like to be very successful in America, you know, to be the latest hot thing in America. And it was the first time I'd been on my own. I was working on my own in that sense. I'd always had Andrew to kind of muck about with before. And it suddenly seemed extremely lonely and extremely high pressure. And at the end of Faith, I decided that in order to kind of get a rein on my life again, I wanted to stop doing certain things.
As I understood it, America was sort of at the center of your initial problems and dissatisfaction with Sony and the way they were handling not only Listen Without Prejudice, but just you in general as an artist.
Yeah, it was very much a clash of cultures, really. As I was saying, you know, I was very confused, very unhappy at the end of the whole Faith thing, and the act and stance that I took in order to try and redress the balance in my own life was not offensive. It may not have been ideal for the Sony executives in the UK and in the rest of the world. Far from ideal, I'm sure. You know, you have an artist that goes out and sells 15 million albums, makes videos, does the tour, does everything, and then suddenly says, "No, I just want to sit in my room." You know, they're not really going to be thrilled about it. But in America, there was definitely a door that shut the minute I said that, and that was really what the court case was about. Was about finally realizing that I didn't have control of my own career, because when I wanted to do something that didn't gel with the record company's ideas of doing things, it just didn't happen, and that was really what I went to court about.
And lest we misquote you, you actually never vowed to not record again if things didn't go your way with Sony, but that would have been difficult. Maintaining after the decision went the other way, it would have been difficult to maintain a relationship with them, I'd imagine.
Oh my God, I mean, absolutely. After I mean, I was quite amazed. I think it was almost like it was kind of a formality, but they did have to actually kind of, after the court case was finished and I'd lost, and not just lost, I lost completely. I mean, I lost on everything, every count. They then called up and, you know, kind of said, well, can't we patch things up kind of thing? But I knew in reality that was like a formality, they had to do that. Mm-hmm. But ultimately, the whole thing was a complete waste of time. You know, took years out of my career and was an embarrassment, I would imagine, to Sony. It was all totally unnecessary. You know, at the end of the day, we came up with the same thing. They sold my contract to someone else. Why couldn't they have just done that and saved us all time and trouble, you know?
Were you concerned about, you know, sort of, it's probably a hard thing to gauge when you're in the middle of something like that, what the public perception of what you're going through is. But I would imagine that there were people there who looked at George Michael and the success and this and that, and they hear things like professional slavery. Well, what is he talking about slavery? You know, Prince had a similar situation with the writing "slave" on you know.
Yeah, I know. I must admit, no, to be really honest, I have to be really honest. Much as I'm a great admirer of Prince's, I was kind of pissed off about that because we had two totally different situations going on. I had a situation where I was bound to a piece of paper I signed when I was 18. I called it professional slavery because I knew it was a good soundbite, for God's sake. I knew it was going to get out. It was a good soundbite. But of course, you can be an incredibly, ludicrously wealthy slave. But at the end of the day, if you can't work anywhere else and you can't leave your boss or tell him to get lost, you know, you're a slave. Doesn't matter how well you're paid.
With all things considered, it was worth it going through all this litigation and taking Sony to?
Oh yeah, it was absolutely worth it. It was a terrible waste of time, but I had absolutely no choice. Of course, in between, Sony have also become the most amazing record company for everybody that's on them. I mean, their chart success has never been anything like it is now, and that's quite ironic. But it wasn't about that. You know, what it was about was just, you know, that I was working with people who didn't really want to work with me, and I'd never been in that position before, and luckily now I'm not.
What kind of a personal toll did this take when it was in the low point of this whole litigation? Were you creatively, I understand it was a tough time for you. Were you able to write? Was recording out of the question?
Well, I mean, in reality, the truth is that all the time that all the legal stuff was going on, I had other problems in my life that far overshadowed the legal problems. So I was not losing any sleep over this court case, and I had other things going on. And creatively, I was stifled in so many ways. Myself that I couldn't write until the whole thing was over, and I realized once I actually went in and started recording as soon as I knew it was going to be over, not when it was over. And at that point I realized, that was when I wrote Jesus to a Child, and at that point I realized that I could start again, and that really most of the stuff that I recorded in the couple of years before had just not been up to par.
So was it the kind of thing that was getting you frustrated, depressed? Were you out getting drunk every night and because of this thing, or because, as you said, there were other things you were going through that took precedence? I
mean, to be honest with you, I was probably most out of control in any kind of sense like that during the whole faith thing. I mean, faith was far more difficult to deal with than not working. Right. You know, in reality, I mean, it was a typical thing. You're out on the road for 10 months. You end up, you know, I was taking drugs. I was doing a lot of things that I hadn't expected to be doing.
Looking for fast love.
Absolutely looking for fast love. I didn't have any time. Sorry. But yeah, I think that no, I didn't go into any deep depression. I went into deep depressions over various things, but actually, in fact, I learned a lot of very, very incredibly important lessons in the last 4 or 5 years. Things that have left me feeling so much better about myself. I have this really strange feeling that my career almost takes care of itself, that it's supposed to happen. I always felt that there was a path that would lead me to this point. I didn't know whether it would mean winning or losing in court. I really didn't know. I didn't know whether it would take 2 years or it would take 5 years. I just had this complete feeling that that I was going to be able to get out there and make music for people again. And I think that's why I didn't worry about it so much. You know, I just have this if there's an equivalent of a guardian angel that's got, like, you know, a copy of Q in its pocket, it's kind of that's the way I feel.
You said a couple of minutes ago that you are at a more prolific point artistically than you've been in some time.
I think where my prolific, where I'm going to kind of aim my output is, for the moment, it's going to be in B-sides. I'm going to try and make EPs out of as many of the singles as I can from older, so that people are getting constantly some new material, you know. I will be doing some shows next year, but I don't tour more, and I feel bad about it because people do really want to see me. But at the end of the day, for the sake of somebody in... I find touring a very lonely, isolating experience. It's not a matter of just being lazy. I find it a very lonely experience. And I don't like being surrounded constantly, day after day, by people who are working for me and who I'm in a position of power with, really. I find that very uncomfortable. So... But in order for me to reach that German fan or that Japanese fan or whatever, I have to go through that for however many months of doing something which is really not something that... It's something that I find really hard to do.
You alluded to some dates next year. Can you say anything more about that? I know you've said many times you're never going to do a tour on the scale of Faith, and maybe for the reasons you just said.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, for exactly those reasons. Right. For exactly those reasons. I love to sing. Right. I hate to tour. You know, I love to sing. I love being up there. I can be George Michael, inverted commas, for a couple of nights, a couple of hours in the evening, and have a great time, do a great job, give people what they want, get what I want. But the rest of the day is a nightmare for me. You know, the being George Michael off stage for the rest of the day is a nightmare. I'm a real homebody. I'd much rather be taking my dog for a walk, or, you know, be with friends. It's just, it's not a matter of laziness. It's a matter of feeling I'm somewhere I don't belong. I feel like I don't belong out there being this professional person going around selling his wares, you know. For instance, today in this building, everyone will treat me as George Michael. And on Friday at the Unplugged, everybody treated me as George Michael, which is a very strange thing to be treated as, if you know what it's like to live it. You know, it's it doesn't feel like me at all. It feels like something I put on, and it does the job of communicating the music that I want to make, and then I take it off again. And I like that. I like being able to stay away from the professional character.
Does it make you sorry you ever took on the character to begin with?
No, because at the end of the day, I'm very happy with where I've ended up. You know, so you really can't. I mean, I think at any point in life, I mean, life is short. You have to just kind of get on with it. And I think at any point in life, if you're happy with where you are, then you can't complain about the way you got there. You know.
Talking about the older record, you said earlier you were gratified by the response to it, and certainly the public response to it, and the critical response on the one hand, in a positive way, was I think people gave you credit for great lyrics and some of the best crafted lyrics that you've come up with, and the musicianship, no one faulted that. There were also, and this is just a sampling of comments.
I have to tell you at this point, actually, I didn't read the American reviews. I read the English reviews. The American reviews, I just looked at the headlines, and that was enough for me.
Oh, was it?
Put them down.
Well, when people say things like joyless or too conservative, or one of the most low-key downbeat pop comebacks ever, does that concern you?
Honestly, nothing the press could write about me can concern me now. I am so... you know, I think that we all learn over the years. We learn more and more about what we do and about how it's received, etc. And as I get older, I see the rock press for exactly what it is, and it is almost entirely a rock press. You know, music press or youth culture press is not really, it's rock press. The people that still write about it normally are people that understand youth culture and very little about music, because if they understood about the music, they'd be bloody out there doing it. And most of them have tried and failed. This is a cliche, but it's true.
What about the rather, what's a fair word, downbeat side to older? The fact that an armchair psychologist might think that the newly liberated George Michael from the Sony deal, what we talked about earlier, would be feeling much more upbeat, and that this record would not be as maybe somber as some people read it as being.
I mean, I thought it was just, I mean, it's like the last one. The last one had 2 really up-tempo tracks on it, and this one had 2 really up-tempo tracks on it. Well, no, at the end of the day, you've got to write about what your experiences are, and my experiences for the last 5 or 6 years have not been particularly upbeat, I have to be honest, you know, so you write what you feel.
And maybe we're overestimating what impact the Sony situation even had on your life.
Yeah, right? Absolutely. Yeah, right. Well, you know, the album is, that reference at the last track on the album is called Free, and people have said it's the only reference to the Sony situation is to say feels good to be free. But who's to say that that is a Sony statement? I knew it would be perceived as a Sony statement, but it means the same thing in lots of ways in my life. I'm so free of so many things that in the 80s I didn't feel I was free of, and so it's a personal statement. It does, you know, I thought to write about the fact that I got away from Sony would be incredibly tedious.
And let me ask you, if a song like Fast Love then stands out as a particularly radio-friendly, let's call it, song from this album, do you feel any obligation to put a track like that on a record like this?
At the end of the day, do I have a responsibility for everything to be over a certain number of BPM or something, you know? I write what I feel. And I'm 34, my God, I'm adding years now. I'm 33 years old. I'm not 18 anymore. I don't want to get out there on stage and run up and down and make people's hearts pound faster. I'm just, you know, I'm just writing the way I feel, and I will never put out an album that is made for other people's tastes, because the moment I do that, is the moment I start writing shit, you know, as far as I'm concerned.
Questions and the speculation is only going to increase the more that you write from personal experience.
Of course,
and I mean, I've got to ask you, because, you know, the dedication to Anselmo certainly spurred another round of speculation about you and who he is and what he meant to the record or to your life. Is that something that you can live with?
I can honestly say that I think people realize that I'm intelligent enough to know that by writing the way that I do and by making dedications such as that, whether I have no problem with the speculation. You know, if I really didn't want people to speculate about my sexuality, I wouldn't do it, would I? Is he gay? Is he straight? Is he whatever? I have no problem with that. Everybody does it. We all do it about each other. You know, I have a real problem with people who think that somehow it's strange that they're not given the answer. Like you're supposed to deny, or you're supposed to confirm, or whatever the rumor is. You know. And to me, I don't know when it became I don't know when it became part of the job that you had to give your entire life. I mean, everybody knows if you become a public figure, you give up a lot of your life. But in the 1990s, it's like, don't do it. If you don't want everything raked over, and if you've got anything to hide, don't do it. It's kind of like, I don't understand that. I mean, you know, we're becoming more and more and more voyeuristic to the point where people are angry that the questions aren't answered. And it's like, piss off, this is my life. Yeah. I've got absolutely nothing to hide. I have no fear of people speculating about my sexuality. If I was worried about that, I would never have attached myself so heavily to AIDS projects.
And as you continue to do, and without...
So I just think people, you know, it's fine if people want to sit and speculate, if they want to know. Most of the things people will hear about me will not be true. Most of the things I hear about me are definitely not true. But as far as people who think that they have a genuine interest in my personal life, the only people that have any right to be interested are people who really like the music.
Does it bother you that they might come to a misunderstanding?
No. I mean, people have been misinterpreting me for 14, 15 years, so it doesn't worry me at all.
As you've acknowledged before, I mean, going back to even to Wham, you've had a fair amount of gay following all the way up to now anyway. Do those fans have a right to either know if he's gay, then why won't he come out and sort of be on our side, or B, if he's straight, clear up the confusion here and stop, you know, teasing us, I guess.
Yeah, that's the thing. There's people think somehow there are various groups of people that want you to do one thing or the other, and it's just like, I'm sorry, but where on earth did I get this responsibility from? You know. I think my private life is all that I really have that's really private. You know, there is not a person in my life that I care about or that cares about me that doesn't know who I am or what my life is. But outside of the people in my life, I mean, who am I clearing it up for, and why am I clearing it up for them? I've had all kinds of rumors. I've had people from the moment I started doing work on that I started doing any charity work for AIDS. People said he must have AIDS. It's like there has to be self-interest here, and I've never bothered clearing anything of that. You know, he's looking a bit thin and all this stuff, and there's me sitting dieting, you know, and I
insulting to the idea of doing good work.
Well, it's insulting, and it's also, I think, for people to stand up and say, no, everybody, I don't have AIDS. It's not the same as saying, no, I'm not dying. Unfortunately, it further stigmatizes people with AIDS. Sure. And I would say that, you know, I've known people with AIDS, and I've seen suffering, and I think it's an absolutely shocking, horrible thing. And in comparison with it, the idea that people think you have AIDS is nothing. Right? So I'm doing work to help people, and to stand up and make everybody think that I was terrified that they might think I might be HIV positive, I thought would have been totally counterproductive. But anyway, I mean, I'm used to it. I'm totally used to it. You don't expect anything else, do you? I make a dedication to someone on an album who's obviously died. Do I expect them to treat it sensitively? No, of course not. If the press decides they want to really have a go at me, they will really have a go at me. If they don't, they don't. And you know, I feel very much more detached from all of the effects of those things since I don't talk to people, you know.
And finally, on a general note, since it's been so long since we've talked to you and a lot of people have seen you, just how you're feeling about things and the way this year has gone, and
I feel fantastic actually at the moment. I've had, I'd say, probably 3.5 years that were worse than I could possibly have imagined in most ways. And I've come out at the other end of them. I mean, the old cliche about no pain, no gain, that appears to be true, because I've come out at the end of it, and I've never felt, I don't think I've ever felt as positive about my life and my work as I do now. And I think that for everything I've been through, there has been a lesson, and I'm really, really grateful for that. I'm really grateful for being 33 years old, having the career that I want and the life that I want, and an opportunity to keep doing it, you know. So no, I've got absolutely no complaints whatsoever.
here's one vote that it won't be another 3 years till we talk.
Well, I think, to
again.
be honest, the funny thing is that now, having taken the time off, I'm not scared anymore of doing this kind of stuff. But hopefully there won't be any necessity for it, you know. I'm actually much more able to deal with things like this now. I'm much more able to deal with them. But I'd still prefer not to, so hopefully I won't have to.
Well, I hope we see you soon.
Okay.
Take care,
cheers.
George. Thanks so much.